would you utilize the expertise of your staff to create an atmosphere in the schools that will lead to educational excellence?
You know, I feel that that is critical, and I think that you could talk to the staff that I had in Wise County, you could talk to the staff I had in Wythe County, that collaborative approach, you've got to sit down, and we have got to come together to create one unified message, and we've all got to be on the same page. So we spend a great deal of time talking and working and formulating out a plan so that everything correlates with the 6-year plan and everything comes together so that we're not pulling in different directions. Because I think when I went to Wise and then I also went to Wythe, that's what we found out. People were working hard. There was not a single person in that division that wasn't working hard. We're just not getting anything done. And part of the reason why we were not getting anything done is because one person had a good little program over here and they were doing this, and another one had a good little program doing over that, but it wasn't pulled together to create that focus. And the analogy that I use a lot of time is that we always had the power of the laser, because all that laser is light, but it's real focused light. And until you focus that light, all you can do is just kind of warm things up. But if you focus it, then you can cut through steel. And that's what we've got to do in the school division, I think, is bring all of those good pieces of light that people have, talk to them, come to a consensus about that, and then get it focused. And so everything we do, from school nutrition to federal programming, to high school, to elementary, to title, all those things, they've all got to come together to achieve those goals that we've set out in that 6-year plan, or whatever the name of the plan is that we come up with.
What is your retention rate for your teachers, your principals, your central office staff?
Our retention rate for the central office staff, we've only lost one person. In our county, we have a very high retention rate, because part is we pay fairly well. And so we're able to recruit individuals from other school divisions, which is critical. And then the other part is I think that our folks know that we are a successful school division. And so individuals want to be part of a school division that is successful, that have high, or at least the individuals you want in your school division. Now, if you are a poor teacher, you don't necessarily want to be in a division that has high expectations, because you're going to stand out. But those individuals that are good, they want the earlier grade teachers, they want those individuals to be effective because they know they're going to get those students at some point in time. So you begin to attract people and you be able to retain people. So for us in Wise County and in Wythe County, we had a very high retention rate.
Thank you.
Dr. Asania?
Oh, yeah. So, actually, my sister-in-law is, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's kind of relevant to the question I want to ask you, is a teacher in Manassas, and then also my niece is in Alexandria, Virginia.
Right.
She's a teacher there. And the reason I'm bringing these up is that, I'm going to be asking you about budgets, and I think there's a little bit of a difference between what I get the feeling with the school systems they're at in Virginia and how much support and how much money they get versus what we struggle with, and so tell me this, how do you approach developing a school system budget? Who would you involve and how would you involve them? And this also goes a little bit further in us and also how do we get the county commission, the mayor, everybody else on board so that we could develop a budget that is acceptable to everybody, but we also can achieve the plans that we're talking about. So
Now, we could talk about that all evening, because I think that is a very complicated and complex issue, and it's also one of the main ones that we've got to do, because money drives almost everything that we do to have the resources and all those things. But I think the very first thing you ask is a question about how do you develop a budget. and we develop a budget around our priorities. I think a lot of people mess up and they develop their budgets and then they try to put their priorities into the budget. And I think that's the wrong way to do it. I think that we develop our priorities first. What do we want to accomplish? And then we create our budget around those priorities. And again, those priorities should go back to our 6-year plan of where we hope to be. Now, what we do is that we actually, and we're starting the process, we've actually started that already. We've got all the principals coming in and they meet with all the directors. And we sit down with them and they go through this year in the budget, I need this, 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 and this. And we ask them to justify each of the things they want. And then we have the 6-year plan there of how that fits in with the 6-year plan. And so once we get all of those needs, and we weed out some things because there's some wants in there, and then there's some things that probably shouldn't be in there. And then we bring all those needs to the board. And again, on our retreat, we look at what adjustments and revisions we're going to make to the 6-year plan. And then we come up, we ask the board about what are your priorities for this upcoming year. So, and for example, one of the things in Virginia, in the last couple of years, we've had a very difficult time that we have a retirement system called the Virginia Retirement System. And teachers have been forced to pay more into that, and divisions have to be paid more into that. Actually, last year, we had to pay another $400,000 or so into the retirement system that we had to come up with ourselves. So in 1 year, come up with almost $500,000 to pay for retirement, and that was not negotiable. That was mandated. So that was one of those unfunded mandates that the state came up with. And then our health insurance went up almost $300,000. So right off the bat, we were looking at a $700,000 decrease or increase in expenditures, and our Board of Supervisors are going to have a difficult time matching that particular amount. So we talked to the board, what are your priorities? And our first priority is that teachers have got to take home more pay than they did last year. Because actually, in Virginia, and this is true of a lot of school divisions, with the increase in the retirement system that they were paying, plus the increases that you had to pay for insurance, your take-home pay was actually going down each year. We actually have, there's about half the school divisions in Virginia right now that a teacher is making less per month right now than they did in 2008. That when we did this Rural School Coalition, we put the numbers up there, and on average, teachers were making about $120 less a month than they were in 2008. And most of it is just due to increases in health insurance and VRS. So our board, for example, said our first priority is we got to stop teachers from going backwards. And so when we developed the budget then, we had to put money into there to make sure that we covered that. The second priority is that we had some pretty extensive increases in health insurance, and so we resolved that we were going to pay the employees' benefit increase out of our budget. So whatever it was for the individual, we were going to pay whatever that increase was to hold the line on that. So those were the two big priorities, that we had. And then, of course, student safety is always the first issue. But then after that, those were the two big priorities. So we began to develop a budget then around those particular pieces. And then we did talk to the Board of Supervisors about this is what we're going to do. And we were able to convince them to put some more money into the budget to help us with that particular piece. But I think when you have a good justification for what you're doing. Now, the other part too, and we were very clear about this, because a lot of folks, well, if you just get rid of half the people in central office, then everything will be fine. And what we did is we showed them that actually if we got rid of everybody in the central office, that's less than 1% of our budget. That actually in our school budget, 72% of our school budget goes to personnel. So now before we cut on any light, before we put any diesel fuel in a bus, before we pay any insurance on any of the buildings or anything, 72% of what we do is in personnel and benefits. And of that 72%, 92% of it is somebody that's in a school building. So if you looked at our budget when we went to the Board of Supervisors and talked to them about that, if 72% of our budget is personnel, if 91% of that or 92% of that is somebody in the classroom, who do you want me to cut? No, well, we don't want anybody to lose their job in the classroom. Well, if we're going to do that, then we've got some money, and we had to go through the math with them to work through about this is what, because we're the largest employer in Wythe County. And so that would have an impact as we begin to lay.
When you say board of supervisors, is that like our county commission?
That's county commissioners, yeah. Yeah, that we have, they are our primary funding agency beyond the state. So we would have a conversation with them. Now, I think one of the secrets to that is that you've got to have constant communication with the county commissioners. And so what we would do with that, as long as they were willing to do that, is we sit down with them every month and talk to them. And we're willing to attend their meetings, and we're willing to listen to them, because as I said earlier, everybody comes to the county commissioners with their hands out. There's nobody coming to you saying, let me give you more money. Everybody comes saying, I've got a wheelbarrow and I just need you to fill it up, and I'll go out with it. And so what we have to do is we've got to understand that oftentimes we're the biggest expense that the county has, but we've got to prove to them, and we've got to convince them that we're not a liability, we're actually an asset. And if we can convince them that when you have businesses coming in, if those businesses, they're going to bring executives in, and part of what they're going to do is they want to be in a school system that they can send their kids to, and they're going to be successful. When we have physicians come to our local hospital, one of the first groups they send them to us every time. And we were able to land a cardiovascular surgeon in Wythe County because, and he said this, because he and his wife were confident that we had the academic kind of preparation that was needed for their children. And they brought those children from New Jersey that was in a private school before. And so when we can convince the county commissioners that we are part of what businesses are looking for, they want quality of life, they want good medical care, and then they want to know what the school system's like. And if we can't say that we're not a good school system and we don't have something to back that up with some factual data, they've got a lot of options. And so we convince the county commissioners that we are a good investment. So with the budget piece and convincing everybody, we could talk a long time on that, and I wouldn't care to do that, but I think it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of communication, and I think it takes a lot of discipline about not having all of us, including the superintendent, have a special project that you want to do and it's not in our overall plan. I think that's critical.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Carolyn?
What steps would you take to ensure school funds are spent wisely and accounted for properly?
I think one of the things that the community has to have faith in you is, first of all, you're honest and you have integrity. So first of all, just in your personal life, when they come to you, they feel like they can trust you and that you're honest, that you may not always give them the answer that they want, but you'll be truthful with them. I think the second thing that they want to know is that you're good stewards of the county's money. So when money is given to you, that you're using that wisely and you're doing with it what you're supposed to do. And so I think actually there's two parts to that. First is that focus piece that I've been talking about, is making sure that we're using the money to fulfill our goals as a division. I think the second part of that is accountability. So making sure that we have good financial audits in place and that we have good accountability pieces in place, and that we share with the board what we're doing, and then we do what we share. I think we have a plan, and then we implement the plan. And so I think that's a constant piece about talking to the Board of Supervisors or to the county commissioners. As I said before, in terms of when we went to the Board of Supervisors, who would be our county commissioners here, and said, you don't want to lay anybody off and you don't want anybody to lose money, here's our budget. 72% personnel, 92% of that is teachers. So show me the math where we can do anything other than what we've proposed. And then they did give us an extra allocation to do that. And so
Thank you.
you're welcome, ma'am.
Roger? We've been very fortunate having advanced placement classes along with dual enrollment. Are you familiar with?
Yes, sir.
Can you elaborate? We've had a
Certainly.
drastic increase, and I'm just curious
Now, in our county, actually, we are probably more focused on dual enrollment than advanced placement, even though we do have advanced placement. But our parents have just about stopped enrolling students in advanced placement. And that's a choice there because for us, actually, we have very strong relationships with the community college system in Virginia. And so a student can actually gain credit that's automatic through the dual enrollment opportunities. Now, we also have what's called the Governor's School. So for our brightest 24 students, we actually have a Governor's School that's on a remote site, and it's a regional Governor's School. And they go half a day there, and it's a STEM-operated Governor's School. So we have heavy math and science and technology with that. And so our very brightest students are going to the Governor's School. And then we have another group of students that we have what we call on that scholars pathway that's going to go to some of those major universities, Virginia Tech, UV at Wise, some of those big colleges in state and out of state. And so with those, most of our students have elected to go with the dual enrollment, which is taught by college and sometimes school individuals. And with that, you get automatic credits. So for most of our students right now that's graduating from George Wythe High School, they're leaving with almost 60 credits when they leave high school. And so there is no reason why our students should not be able to enter college as juniors.
All right, what about your percentage? Is it increasing each year?
Yes, it is. And actually, this year, we had 18, I believe it was 18 students who graduated from Wytheville Community College in May and then came back and graduated from high school in June. So they graduated with an associate's degree and then had all of those general education courses done. Now, I know that other parts of the state, they don't have the same kind of connections and availability of the community college system close to them, and they still are relying heavily on AP. And so I used to be an advanced placement teacher myself, so I know the process and understand how it works. Just for us, the dual credit and the dual enrollment piece was it's a much more viable option, but the AP piece, if that is what best serves the needs of our students and parents here, then that is something we highly want to advance because we're never going to attract parents unless we have some of those high-ability classes. So we want to make sure that we continue to maintain those excellence so we can encourage those business leaders and parents to come into our community.
Tell us about your successful efforts in obtaining outside funding, other than public funds for a project.
We actually have created a foundation, and we fund a position in our division as a grant writer, and that individual helps us write grants and to locate grants and to identify grants. Now, the thing that we have found in the last couple of years, those outside sources are getting more and more difficult and more competitive. 10 years ago, we could find grants to do a lot of things, but really after 2008, when we experienced that nationwide recession, a lot of those outside grants went down. But the foundation, we have been able to maintain a balance of close to $1 million in that piece that we're able to live off of and do some things. And I think we have a similar foundation program here. But we also have another foundation, the With Plan Foundation, that has, I believe that they have in excess of $50 million that they're working off of. And so we're able to partner with them on a great number of grants. But we constantly look for any of those state or federal grants that are available. But now we're also very careful. I think sometimes people can become drunk on the allure of getting a grant, and you get a $50,000 grant that costs you $100,000 to implement, and it doesn't match up with what you're trying to do to begin with. And so anything that we do get a grant for, we again go back. Is this part of our core mission? Is this what we hope to accomplish? Is this going to help us accomplish our mission? Because sometimes you can spend an awful lot of money chasing down some grants that really are not that significant, nor does it help you promote your cause. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome, sir.
Were you able to meet the president of Water State today?
Yes, I did. Good conversation with him. And now, one of the things that we have done, just to let you know on that, in Virginia, there is something called the 721 rule. And I don't know if it's here in Tennessee or not, but 721 rule is that our governor in Virginia came from a business background, so a very successful businessman. And what he understood was that people are not coming to Virginia, business is not coming to Virginia, because we don't have the workers. We don't have the skilled workers to do that. So when they did the analysis, is that of the 10 jobs, for every 10 jobs that are created in Virginia, one of those jobs are going to require a 4-year degree, an advanced degree, some kind of advanced management, supervisory, technical, chemical, engineer, physician, some of that nature. 2 of those jobs are going to require a 4-year degree, but not really a master's degree and not a lot specialized. The remaining 7 jobs are less than a 2-year degree. And so the jobs that's going to be available for some of these students are actually in some of the career and technical. And so part of what we've been doing is trying to make that balance between those kids who are going to go to college and be successful and get that 4-year degree, and then some students that can do that technical piece and be able to go out and get a job paying more than some of these 4-year degrees are paying. So we partnered with our local community college, which is more of a technical school. And in those technical schools, we worked with them to create dual enrollment opportunities so students went straight from us, straight to the college. And then we also had another pathway called Transition to Work, which if we could partner with a business, if you tell us what skills you need, so you need a precision machinist, we've got excellent facilities for machinery. If you tell us what you need and the certifications you need, we'll produce that student for you. And in our MOU, you agree if they can pass these tests, you're going to hire them when they get out of high school. And so that is something I think with the industries that we have here in Hamilton County that we would be able to possibly do, because I was speaking to one of the gentlemen that's on the industrial development or economic development, I forget the title, but he was talking about that he's got businesses wanting to come, but we don't have the workers or the skilled workers to get those folks to come in. And part of, I think, what we've got to do with county commissioners and also with the industrial development, we've got to be a partner in that. And we've got to give our students and we've got to give our children those viable jobs that keep them here and that build our community and continue the growth of our county. So that whole piece, I think, is something that we need to look at in terms of how we can partnership with some of those technical schools and some of those community colleges to be successful.
I think the fellow that does the dirty job, world's dirtiest jobs, what's that actor's name or
Oh, yeah,
celebrity's name?
I know, Mike Rogan.
He's driving that.
Yeah. Well, he's not only driving that, I think our nation's driving that, because I think a lot of parents have sent kids through 4 years of school. They've got a $240,000 tuition, and their children are qualified to do nothing. And so I think a lot of us are beginning to see that we need to prepare students for success. And whatever that success is going to be, but we've got to make sure that they have the necessary skills to be successful. And if we don't provide that kind of skilled labor force, they will move them out of the country, and that's already what's happening to us, and that's part of
I
what.
hear a lot of the governor candidates here running now, that's what I'm hearing, that they're realigning just for that.
And, you know, I think part of the issue, and this is where we're going to have to do a better job, is that in the 80s and 90s, there was a big push that if you don't go to college, you're lost. If you don't get a 4-year degree, you have no chance. And we were so successful with that message that everybody went to a 4-year college. And now we don't have enough skilled laborers in this country to do the work that's needed. And so I think there's always that balance that we always need the chemical engineers, we need the physicians, we need, you know, those individuals that need that highly skilled and advanced, the doctorals and the master programs. But we also need those individuals that can do some of that skilled labor work too, and there is good money in that. Right now, we can graduate you from Wythe County schools. You will have a certification in welding. You can go out to Northern Virginia or some of these heavy industrial. There's a minimum salary right now of $80,000, $90,000. You get that certification from high school, or you can go to a 4-year degree, mass $200,000 of debt. We'll start you out as a teacher at $36,000. So you can leave high school and have a $90,000 job with no basic, any further education, or you can pay back 7 years of your salary to get you where you were at even. And so we're not discouraging people from being teachers, because I think that's the greatest decision I ever made. But I also think that there are some folks who would do an excellent job in some of those. And so I think one of the things that we might need to do as a board as we begin to look at this is look at, are we preparing kids for the jobs that's going to be out there? And do we need to strengthen our career and technical opportunities?
We'd like the heat and cooling guy to come in here.
Yeah, just, exactly. Well, the cooling seems
Pay
to,
him a lot of money. I know Janice would.
the cooling seems to be working. That doesn't seem to be the problem.
Though the other night we needed cooling.
Okay.
We had a little front come through.
Okay.
You done? All right, is it, Mr. Grigsby?
I think he's already given us several instances where he's demonstrated his ability to build confidence in schools time and time again. So I'll come up with another question. What are we gonna have to do different or teach different to help our kids be successful in the future, 10 years down the road? Is there something we're neglecting?
You know, in a lot of states right now, they're talking about the 4 Cs or the 6 Cs, whatever those are, however many numbers that you end up putting with that. But a lot of things that people are talking about right now is that if you think that we can prepare a kid for what's going to happen 10 years from now, you know, we don't even know what those jobs are. We don't know what would be involved in that, because some of the technology and some of the jobs in 10 years is just going to be incredible. You know, the phone that we have right now, that's not really that old. That's less than a decade old. And just the amount that we can put into that now and the amount that we can get out of that. So people are talking about you got to have critical thinking skills. So you've got to be able to think, and you've got to be able to process information. And when things change, you've got to be able to have those critical thinking skills to adapt. The other part is collaboration. Is that we've got a lot of folks that can do some things well, but they can't collaborate with other folks and make it happen. And if you're only good in your particular area, you're not much good to society, because you can't integrate that into what you're doing. The other C that's sometimes involved in that is communication, that you've got to be able to communicate, and communicate involves listening too. So it's not only telling people what, but also listening to what folks need. So those are some of the kind of things I think that we have to do, is that we have to teach students not only those essential skills and those fundamental literacy skills, but then they've got to be critical thinkers.
How do you teach them to become critical thinkers?
Well, I tell you, I think part of what you do is you ask them not what 2 + 2 equals, but how does 2 + 2 equal? And I think that's, and although that can seem to be a very simple kind of piece, if I could ask you, how in the world could 2 + 2 equal 4? If you could answer that question, then you really understand mathematics. How can you add 2 negatives and get a lower negative? If you can understand that, then it's a situation where you begin to understand how math actually works. And so I think instead of just teaching rote memory about the Civil War started in 1861, why did the Civil War start? And what was the rationale behind that? And so I think it all relies a little bit on how you approach, how the questions you ask, not about so much about what happened, why did it happen, how did it happen, those kind of things. And so that does require a little bit retraining of some of our educators, because most of us were taught to ask those what questions.
You good?
Yes.
All right, Janice, I think you're gonna be the pre-supper question.
All right. How do you think you could help us to increase parental involvement and support for schools?
I think the way that you have to increase involvement in anything that you do, regardless if it's in your personal life or if it's in a school or in a business, people have to have a desire to be there. Are you welcome in your school? Now, everybody says they want parent involvement, but then do you actually set up pieces to involve those individuals? I'm teaching a class at Radford University right now to beginning principals. So this is their first class, and one of the young ladies I have in there is a Hispanic lady. And part of what she said is that everybody talks about inviting the Hispanics in to school. Everybody's got that. But when you walk into school, is there anybody that's Hispanic that it's at the front door that knows that language? And she said if you do have that, normally you have a person that will speak Spanish, but they have no value and no appreciation of our culture. So you've got somebody that speaks my language, but they don't know me. And so if you're going to do that, regardless if you're Hispanic or if you're African American or if you're white, whatever the case is, do we invite people in? Do we actually encourage and value their input? Or do we just do a meeting to where we say, come in, give us your input, and then we take the input and we don't do anything with it? So you've got to invite them in. Schools have got to be welcoming. They've got to have a sense of value to that. And I think parents have to have a purpose. Why are you coming to school? Are you coming for a purpose? Because most people are not going to come unless there is a purpose there. And then we also talk to, I think, we talk to parents about, and community members too, this school system is only going to be as good as you make it. And we can't do this by ourselves, and we want you to be part of it. And so regardless if your part is helping us convince the county commissioners that we need more funding for this or that, or we need more community support to come in to help with the reading program at our elementary level, or if it's one of our recent things where we've got about 60% of our kids on free and reduced lunch, we have about 55% of our kids in Wythe County right now are being raised by a grandparent. So if you stop and think about that for just a minute, 55% of our kids being raised by a grandparent. We have 1 in 4 of our kids in poverty. Now, the way to define poverty is if you've got 4 kids, it's less than $30,000 a year. So, I mean, think about that for just a moment. You're making $30,000 a year. You got 4 kids. That's the poverty line. We got 1 of every 4 of our kids in poverty. So when we talk to parents, what do they want to do? We want to make sure that those students have food to eat during the week, because a lot of them are not getting food. And so we had parents create what was called the backpack program, and a lot of people do this, but all of ours is parent volunteered, is that they go in, they used to fill up backpacks, now they just fill up grocery bags, but each week that we send home some non-perishable food with those kids on every Monday, and they take that home, and that gets them through the week and the weekend. And then over the summer, we do the same thing, because we know that those students then they don't have the accessibility to food. So I think make it inviting and make sure that we're looking at all phases, because I think sometimes a lot of us came from a white middle class or upper class. With the percentage of students that we have in poverty and the percentage of students we have in free or reduced lunch, they don't always feel real comfortable coming into that environment. Even though I've had some success, when I go into a very formal setting, I'm always wondering if I'm picking up the right fork. Am I doing the right kind of thing with the way that I act or the way that I address folks and the way that I just communicate? Could you imagine if somebody came from an environment where they're not comfortable with that at all? Are they going to come into a formal situation and feel welcome to begin with? So I think, first of all, we got to create a welcoming environment. And then I think we got to give a purpose for folks. Why would you come in? Well, we want you to do this. We want you to do that. And we really would like for you to. And so I think that all comes around into that, give them a purpose, really make them feel welcome. And then when they do come, make sure that they're doing something meaningful that when they leave, they can feel good about what they've done.
To be fair to all the candidates, we want to ask
Certainly.
questions. So, Mr. Vice Chairman Kinder, go ahead and,
Well, about everything I've got here,
Well, you
done
could-
been asked and answered, but let me change it just a little. What do you think about sports in schools and how do you support it?
I think that sports play an important role in school, and everything's got to be balanced, I think. And, you know, the Greeks had that term in terms of the golden mean, that everything in balance, nothing in excess. And so I think it's important that we keep everything in balance. But as I went through high school, I was captain of the football team, I was captain of the track team. We had some low athletes, and that was the only reason. But I think that it's a place that it takes a lot of students who are unable to fit into different places, and it gives them something, whether it's football or band or forensics or whatever it is. Those kind of extracurricular activities give kids one more opportunity to become invested in the school. And so with that, I think it's incredibly important to offer those kind of opportunities. And it's also the thing, I think, that ties a lot of our community to the school, is that we don't get a lot of people come out to the science labs. We don't get a lot of folks that come out to a chemistry lab, but we do bring people out to a basketball game and to a football game. And that's where we can make some of those connections that we're going to need on down the road in terms of that support we need for the school division. So great opportunity for students, and then it's a great way to network and bring the community in to the school system.
We've got two high schools, which you talked
Right.
about mile apart. How would you manage splitting your time between them to try to keep all the parents in both of them happy?
You know, in all seriousness, when we are going to football games and it's an inter-county contest, I do actually look at my watch to make sure that I'm not on one side too long, and I make sure. So I do go back and forth on that, and I do think it's important that you're seen at those events too, because the students need to know that you care, the parents need to know that you care, and then you do need to actually be conscientious about that you're actually on both sides and that you're seen in both schools, and that folks don't begin to think that you have a favorite to that whole piece. Yeah, but we'd be at those games, and then we really try to make sure that we let folks know that we're visible in the community with that.
One more question. If you would be offered a job in Hamilton County, how long would it take you to move to Hamilton County?
We would want to get here very quickly, as soon as we can, because part of the deal is, if I'm gonna be superintendent, you gotta be superintendent, you gotta be embedded in the county. It can't be a situation where you're driving and commuting back in, because when you go to those ball games, when you go to the forensics, when you go to the choral and all of those kind of things, it's very hard leaving every night at 11 o'clock and then going home. And so you've got to have that ability to be here. And so a lot of it would depend, you know, on finding the house that we wanted and doing some of those kind of things. But we would want to move in quickly, because we don't want to be a part-time superintendent. When we're in this. And so, and I think that's the only way that you can be effective too, because you've got to be able to connect with county folks, and you got to be able to connect with the city and with sheriff and Department of Social Services and everyone. And you can't do that doing it remotely. So we would look quickly.
Again, you was to come to Hamilton County and you got to find a house real soon, would it be a possibility of renting an apartment or something?
We would do that. Actually, the thing that we would do is that we would want to have a place here just almost immediately. So we would look at the possibility of getting some place to stay, rent until we could find a place that we would like. And there is a possibility, and the reason why we began to look here anyway is build a house. And so that process would take a little bit of time, but in the meantime, we would be here. Because when you go to the county commissioners, one of the first things that they want to know, are you paying property taxes here? And so that would be a situation, you need to be able to do that. And I think that's a fair question, because you can't ask people to pay for something that you're not.
How long would it take you to type your loose ends up there, give them a notice?
I've talked to our board up there, and currently, I think we've talked about an interim person that's internal, that would be a wonderful individual, and that individual, we've actually been kind of grooming to take over. So the first thing that I'd want to do is make sure that they're in good shape, because they have been extremely good to me. But we're at a point to where I think this internal person, at least on the interim, where they've been involved in every decision and the way that we operate, where we have this collaborative nature, there's no decision made in isolation. And so this individual has a good history of that. She's been with the division for a long period of time, and if they go with that, it could be a real easy and real quick transition.
Chairman, I think my time is expired.
Okay. Well, I'll just, as you all have stated, you've answered most of the questions. There's one here that we hadn't heard, and I'll hit it, and then I've got a couple more. What do you do or have done to maintain, that teachers take a beating?
They do.
To keep the morale high for your employees?
One of our 6-year goal plans this year was to create a positive work environment, because just as you said, they're taking a beating from everywhere right now, from the federal level, where you put in a private school secretary of education, to the state level, where they're not getting a lot of help in terms of some of the money and some of the support that they need. So creating a positive work environment was one of our major objectives. And so we did a couple things. First of all, we created a series of listening tours, as I talked to you about before. So we went to every single school, and we invited teachers to come out, and we sat down with them in a very informal kind of situation. What can we do to make things better for you? And so I think that was one of the first things that we did. The second thing that we did is we really tried to focus on that increasing take-home pay, where in the past they were actually going backwards. And so we stopped that now, and it wasn't much forward, but we stopped the backward movement. And I think that our teachers actually appreciated that part. I think the other thing that we do is we've done little things that's really made a big difference. I mentioned to you before, the whole central office staff is that we go out and we take over lunch duty for the teachers. So all the directors, we go out, and the elementary folks who used to have to come in the cafeteria and sit, they get a break. And that's only 30 minutes, but we received a lot of comments back from that. And then during that time also, we fix them lunch, and we take them lunch, and we just out there to let them know that we're from central office, and we do care about you. We know what you're doing, and we appreciate you. The other part that we've done, there were some work days that we had scheduled into the calendar, and we gave them those days off to use at home, as opposed to having to come into school to do that work. So we said you had a day that you could come in to do grades and to finish up on the semester. We're going to let you do that at home, and we're going to give you that particular day off. They very much appreciated that. There was a day that we had during Election Day. Most of our schools are used for polling places, so we can't have school. And so we gave them that day off. We just told them, you achieved what we asked you to achieve. We asked you to be in the top 10. You got us there, and so here's a little thanks. Had a lot of appreciation for that. We've bought them lunch a couple times that go in the cafeteria, and we're just going to buy you lunch. So there's every now and then that school cafeteria, like last week, had the Thanksgiving dinner. And so that's normally a little step up from the normal lunch that they provide. And so we told everybody this day's on us. And so go in and have lunch, and we'll buy that. So we've done several of those kind of things. Plus, I think just a piece of sending on, notes to them, how much we appreciate them. We keep them informed. Every month I send out an update, not only those updates I send out to the board, but I also send out a monthly update to our teachers. So I tell them this is what we're doing, this is what's happened, to be open and transparent. We take the board packet that the board would get, and we take anything out that's legal or anything that's out that's, personnel-wise, but then we give the teachers everything else because we're open and transparent about it. If we're going to do it, we don't need to hide from it. And so we give them that information to give them that kind of knowledge that what we're doing is in the open. So we try to do those kind of things.
Could you elaborate further on how you do that with the ancillary departments? I work with like some of the line employees in food service, could be transportation, any of those positions, which are valuable to the system. I mean, you can't function without them. So how do you transfer that same morale building to that group of employees?
We do that a couple ways, a lot of the same kind of things. We try to make ourselves very visible at the bus garage. We have an annual banquet for our bus drivers, so they come out and we feed them a very nice supper. And then we have door prizes, which almost everybody wins something. And then for custodians, this year, for example, in a very tough budget year, we knew that we were not paying our custodians very much, and so we gave the teachers a $400 raise. But now we did pay for the VRS and for the insurance, which equated to about a $2,000 overall. But we talked to our custodians and we gave them a $2,000 raise because we appreciated them. Our paraprofessionals, we did the same thing. This year, we're going to focus on increasing your salary as paraprofessionals. Next year, we've promised in this budget cycle that our administrative assistants are next. And so they're going to be the ones that we give a little bit more money to the starting salary. So I don't think that money is the answer to everything, but it certainly is very appreciated, especially at some of those levels, because we're just not paying those folks very much. Some of them barely have, a cost of living kind of piece that they can even make it. So we do some of those kind of things, and then we recognize the Clean School Award, so custodians who go beyond. We give them a plaque that they can hand out, plus we give them a $500 stipend for winning that particular award. And so there's just a couple of things that we do, incentive-wise, and then just appreciation-wise. A lot of folks, if you'll just come to them and tell them that they've done a good job, and you actually, instead of just telling them they've done a good job, you actually specify what they've done so they know you've taken the time to even really recognize what they've done, then that means a lot to folks.
Anybody else have any questions?
Let me ask one more thing, my time expires all of you.
That's fine, we got all night.
Now, do you have in your system any snow days built in?
Now, what we do is that we actually build a calendar, and then we say that we're not going to go beyond a certain date. And normally it's the second week in June, because if we go past that, then it's very hard for us to get summer school in and get everything done, and then plus make some of the transitions. So right now, we're scheduled to get out in May the 25th. We know, that we won't get out in May because we have snow days. So our built-in snow days are just added on to the end of the year. And then if we see that we're going to run into that second week in June, then we talk to folks about different things. But we normally get through the first semester without any problems. January and February are tough months, but we normally just add it on to the end. And we've been missing on average. Last year we only missed 3 days. This year, normally we'll miss anywhere between 8 and 12 though.
The state of Tennessee allows you to build in 13 snow days.
Mm-hmm. Well, now our snow days, we just kind of really build that in on the end. And so we tell anybody,
Just by adding 15 minutes
oh,
A day.
each day.
We go extra to get those days.
How do you plan for your graduations?
what we do is we don't send out graduation requirements or graduation announcements after February. And then we tell folks, do not plan a cruise on May the 29th. If you do that, then you're on your own. That really until,
Well, and that's, you just have, weather's different, you have real snows.
Yeah,
Well, we have some a little bit.
Dusting and.
Global warming thing.
yeah.
Let me just ask you a point of question. Could you start it, if you were offered the position, could you begin at the first of the year?
That would be, I
Or if
think,
you accepted it?
yeah,
We
if-
offered and you accepted.
if it would be a situation, we could definitely begin transition. My main thing is I want to leave my other school division in good hands. And as I answered to Ms. Hahn before, I don't think you'd want anybody that would just abandon the school division anyway. And so it would be a situation to where I've already talked to my board and we've already been placing some things in order to make that a smooth transition. So it could be a very quick transition, but I would think by
Well,
January
have
we could
budgets
be
and
done.
things like that
Yeah.
coming up, planning and all that. So I just wanted to know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, but,
so you
and
don't see to like spring and summer and that.
And that's the other part that I've actually talked to our board about too, is that I want to be in on this process because this budget process is an incredibly important piece, and some things you're doing right now is going to determine the success of what we're going to have in the fall. So,
That's kind of what I was getting at.
right, yeah, we definitely want to be part of that and become
It's
involved.
already started.
Yeah.
Tracy's already started on the budgets.
All right, one other question, I guess. I assume when I hear you saying you're not outsourcing any of your, whether cafeteria, bus drivers, that's,
Everything's done in-house, and actually our cafeteria, and I think it's the same way here, our cafeteria is self-sufficient. And we don't put any money into that. And then our bus drivers, our custodians, all of those things we do in-house.
Have you ever
prefer
had
that.
a deficit at the end of your budget year in any of your departments?
No, we've never had a deficit. We've actually had a surplus every year. So, and what we do with that is we work with the Board of Supervisors, and they have been pretty good about allowing us to use that for capital improvement projects, because you never want to use that surplus to put into reoccurring costs with one-time money. But they normally do allow us to use a surplus for building needs and facility needs.
I was probably asleep when this was asked, but how many students do you have?
We have about 4,000 in this division, and at one point in time, we had close to 7,000 in Wise County. Coalfield's really decimated that.
I went to sleep since then.
And you said your cost per student where you are now is around $8,000?
We have somewhere, between $8,000, depends on how you calculate that, but
Sure, but
it's,
approximately.
but we're averaging about $8,000.
well, that doesn't have your capital improvements built into that, does it?
No, capital improvement is different. We just talk about operating budget normally when we talk about per student expenditures.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to say? Not into the mic especially?
Not into the mic.
Okay. Well, Dr. Perry, Dr. Jeff Perry, I apologize. We thank you for your time, very impressive, and, we've got one more interview to go, and we'll be in touch.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, certainly it's been a pleasure. This has been a wonderful school division. Everybody that I've met today has just been so genuine, and I think when you've been in the field for a couple of years, you know the difference between when people are playing the game and when they truly care. And you guys you have a wonderful group of folks here. They are highly dedicated. You can see that, and they care a lot about kids, and I can see that there's a spirit of cooperation in some things here, that the potential is just incredible. So you should be proud of what you have, and I appreciate the opportunity to come in and speak with you this evening. So I appreciate my guides this evening, and who've always taken care of me.
You survived and everything.
We did.
He survived.
It was it was about to be
And-
a long trip from the hotel to Craigville.
And my wife was just very appreciative too of the opportunity to come in to get to know you. She's just
You tell her we appreciate it.
she fell in love with you guys too. So she is a good one. She married beneath herself. That's for sure. She could have done a lot better.